My name is Allison, but everyone calls me Ellie. For the past 12 years, I've owned and run a small hair salon called Ellie's Chair in a quiet suburb of Lexington. It's not glamorous. We do perms for grandmothers, trims for businessmen, and the occasional daring balayage for a college student. My world is the soft hum of hairdryers, the chemical smell of dye, and the steady, comforting snip-snip of scissors. More than that, my world is built on listening. In my chair, people don't just get a haircut, they shed weight. They talk about their ungrateful teenagers, their arthritis, their dreams of a cruise, their dying marriages. I've heard it all. I offer coffee, a sympathetic nod, and a style that might make them feel just a little bit lighter when they walk out. I'm a hairdresser, not a therapist or a hero. At least, that's what I thought until Sarah walked in. It was a Tuesday, the slow stretch between lunch and the after-work rush. The rain pattered against the big front window. I was wiping down my station when the bell chimed. She stood there, hesitant, like a deer caught in headlights. Sarah. I knew her as a regular, but a quiet one. She'd come in every 8 weeks like clockwork for a simple, chin-length bob. Always neat, always practical. Her husband, Michael, would sometimes pick her up, a handsome guy in a polo shirt with a dealership logo, all easy smiles and firm handshakes. But this Sarah was different. Her hands, clutching her purse, were trembling. Her eyes, usually downcast, darted to the window every few seconds. She looked exhausted. "Hi Sarah," I said, my professional cheerfulness feeling suddenly hollow. "Your usual?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then shook her head. A tiny, almost imperceptible movement. "No," she whispered, then cleared her throat. I was thinking, maybe some highlights? Something brighter? That was the first red flag. The Sarah I knew never deviated from her routine. Michael, she'd mentioned once with a tight smile, liked her hair, classic and clean. "Of course," I said, keeping my voice soft. "Let's get you settled." As I draped the cape over her, I felt the tension radiating from her shoulders. The salon was empty except for old Mrs. Gable getting a blue rinse under the dryer, already half asleep. I started sectioning her hair. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. Then, as I mixed the lightening formula, she spoke to my reflection in the mirror. "He threw out my photo album last week." The statement was so flat, so devoid of emotion, it took me a second to process. "I'm sorry?" "The one from college. Me and my roommates. My trip to Cape Cod." She wasn't crying. She was just empty. He said it was clutter. That living in the past was unhealthy. That I needed to focus on our family now. The words were a textbook line from a controlling playbook. I'd heard variations before, but never with such chilling detachment. That's horrible, Sarah," I said, my hands pausing. "Those were your memories." She just nodded, her eyes fixed on her own lap. And then, like a dam breaking with a quiet sigh, it all came out. Not in a hysterical rush, but in a bleak, monotone confession. It wasn't about physical violence. Michael had never hit her. His control was subtler, more insidious. He managed the finances down to the last penny, demanding receipts for a grocery store muffin. He called her phone 10, 15 times a day while she was at her cashier job at Food Mart. "Just checking in," he'd say. He'd systematically criticized and driven away her friends from before the marriage. "Jenny is so dramatic. Amanda is a bad influence." He monitored her social media until she just deleted it all to avoid the interrogation. And then came the real terror. "He says if I ever left," Sarah murmured, her voice so low I had to lean in, "he'd take Lily. He has the house. He has a better job. He's already talked to a lawyer friend. He says the court would see an unstable mother who's easily influenced and a stable, providing father." She finally looked up, and the raw fear in her eyes was worse than any tears. "He'd take my baby, Ellie. He'd do it just to win." My blood ran cold. This wasn't just marital discontent. This was a hostage situation wrapped in a picket fence and a new SUV. I finished applying the highlights, my mind racing. I was a hairdresser with a mortgage on my salon and a teenage son to feed. What could I possibly do? But as I watched the color develop, bringing out strands of pale gold in her mousy brown hair, I saw something else. A faint, defiant spark. She'd asked for something brighter. It was a tiny act of rebellion. She had come to me. I made a decision. I might not be a lawyer or a cop, but I was a woman with a salon, a network of other women, and a deep, stubborn belief in not looking the other way. Sarah, I said, meeting her eyes in the mirror as I rinsed the color. Listen to me, you are not crazy. What he's doing is wrong. It's abuse. And you are not alone. That was the beginning. It started with small, practical things, the kind of help one woman can offer another without a degree. I gave her an old iPhone of mine I'd been meaning to recycle. This is your phone, I said. Keep it charged, keep it hidden. At work, in your locker. My number and one other are in it. The other number was my friend's father, Frank, Uncle Frank to everyone. A retired police sergeant, now a plumber with a gruff exterior and a heart that hated bullies more than clogged drains. I created a hiding place. In the bottom drawer of the vanity in my salon bathroom, behind a stack of paper towels, I placed a sealed envelope. Inside were photocopies of her driver's license, Lily's birth certificate, and $200 in cash I could barely spare. This is your escape kit, I told her. You never know when you might need to grab Lily and go. Now you know where your papers are. I introduced her to Uncle Frank over a covert coffee at a diner 3 towns over. He didn't offer miracles. He offered gritty, procedural advice. You need a paper trail, he grumbled, stirring his coffee. Start a log. Date, time, what he says, what he does. Not on a phone he can check. A little notebook. Hide it good. He told her about filing for an emergency protective order if Michael made a direct threat. And if you're scared, you call 911. Not for a chat, to make a report. Every report is a piece of paper. A stack of papers starts to mean something to a judge. For a few weeks, it seemed like this quiet, clandestine support was enough. Sarah's shoulders lost some of their rigidity. She managed a real smile when she saw her finished highlights. She started her log. Then Michael noticed the hair. Sarah came in the following week, her face pale. He didn't like it, she said simply. The spark was gone, drowned in fresh panic. 2 days later, he walked into my salon. It was a busy Saturday. He was all smiles, greeting my other clients like a politician. He waited until I was alone at the back, mixing a toner. Ellie, he said, his voice a pleasant, low hum that didn't match the ice in his eyes. Sarah's hair. It's very different. She wanted a change, I said, keeping my tone professional and neutral. She's impressionable, he continued, the smile never leaving his face. Easily swayed. She's been under a lot of stress, making poor decisions. Our family is going through a private matter. He leaned in slightly. I'd consider it a personal favor if you just stuck to trims from now on. We wouldn't want any misunderstandings to affect your lovely little business here, would we? The threat was crystal clear. It wasn't shouted. It was delivered with a salesman's polish. My heart hammered against my ribs. This man saw my livelihood, the product of 12 years of sweat, as a minor leverage point to be squeezed. The war had begun, and my salon was now on the front line. The first shot came as an anonymous complaint to the county health department. A disgruntled client reported unsanitary conditions, vermin, and improper chemical storage at Ellie's chair. I spent 3 days in a cold sweat, scrubbing every surface, organizing my supply room with military precision, waiting for the inspector. When he came, he was thorough. He found nothing. He closed the case, but the stain of the accusation lingered. I saw the looks from a few regulars who'd heard the gossip. Next came the online reviews. A cluster of 1-star ratings appeared on Yelp and Google. Gave me a chemical burn. Unprofessional and dirty. The accounts were new, with no other history. They were lies, but they sat there like digital rot, chipping away at my reputation. Then, the petty harassment. At 2 a.m., my doorbell would ring. 10 large pizzas would be delivered to my home address, ordered and paid for online. My trash cans were tipped over repeatedly. It was childish, but it was a message. I'm watching. I can reach you. I can make your life difficult. Worse, Sarah reported that Michael had found the secret phone. He'd torn her purse apart after accusing her of hiding money. His control tightened like a vice. He began openly talking about filing for full custody, citing her erratic behavior and association with questionable individuals. He meant me. We were losing. Our little resistance, built on hidden phones and whispered advice, was being crushed by his relentless, calculated pressure. Sarah was shrinking back into her shell, paralyzed by the fear of losing Lily. I was fighting a shadow, expending energy defending my business from his anonymous attacks. Uncle Frank's advice about police reports felt futile against this kind of guerrilla warfare. The turning point didn't come from a legal maneuver or a brilliant trick. It came from the most ordinary source imaginable, a neighbor. Mrs. Jenkins was in her 70s, a widow who lived directly across the street from Sarah and Michael. She was the neighborhood's quiet eyes, spending her days in a plush armchair by her bay window, knitting and observing the comings and goings of the street. Sarah had always thought she was a friendly but distant presence. One evening, after a particularly nasty argument where Michael had hissed his custody threats inches from her face, Sarah had fled to the front porch, gulping in the cold air. He'd followed. Mrs. Jenkins, taking out her recycling bin, saw it all. She saw Michael grab Sarah's upper arm, his fingers digging in. She saw him pull Sarah close, his face a mask of smiling fury for the benefit of any other neighbors who might glance out. She saw his lips move. The next day, Mrs. Jenkins called Sarah on the secret phone, which Sarah now kept hidden in a pocket of Lily's stroller. "Sarah, dear, it's Edna Jenkins from across the street." The old woman's voice was steady. "I saw him last night. On the porch. I heard what he said to you." Sarah's breath caught. You heard? My hearing is just fine, dear. And my late husband, God rest him, was a family court judge for 30 years. I know a performance when I see one, and I know a threat when I hear one." There was a rustle of paper. "I've written down what I saw and heard, date and time. It's notarized. My lawyer friend notarized it this morning. If you need it, if you go to court, you tell your lawyer to call me. I'll be a witness." It was a simple act of courage. An old woman refusing to be a silent bystander. That affidavit, that piece of paper with a notary's stamp, became our first solid piece of ammunition. It was no longer Sarah's word against Michael's charming facade. It was the word of a respected, neutral, elderly neighbor with a judge for a husband. Buoyed by this, and with Uncle Frank's constant, gruff coaching, Sarah did the hardest thing she'd ever done. She used the money she'd painstakingly skimmed from grocery cash back over months. She used the list from legal aid Frank gave her, and she hired a lawyer. A young, fierce family law attorney named Maya Rodriguez who specialized in high-conflict custody cases. The battle moved from the shadows of my salon and Sarah's home to the stark, fluorescent light of the family court. The hearing was for temporary custody orders and a restraining order. Michael was impeccable. A tailored suit, a calm demeanor. He spoke of his love for Lily, his stable home, his concerns about Sarah's recent instability, her newfound rebellious streak, and her alliance with a local business owner who seems to have a vendetta against traditional family values. He glanced at me, sitting in the back of the gallery, with a look of polite pity. Then Maya presented our case. She didn't scream or accuse. She methodically laid out the evidence. The notarized affidavit from Mrs. Edna Jenkins, describing the physical restraint and the verbal threat about taking Lily. Sarah's painstakingly kept log, entered as an exhibit, detailing the financial control, the constant calls, the isolation. A statement from Lily's daycare teacher, noting the little girl's increased anxiety, clinginess, and mention of daddy yelling at mommy. My own testimony about Michael's threat to my business, corroborated by the closed health department case file and the Yelp review records Maya had subpoenaed, which showed the accounts were created from an IP address linked to Michael's dealership. It wasn't a dramatic, movie-style showdown. It was a slow, grinding process of painting a picture. The picture wasn't of a perfect father, but of a controller, a manipulator who saw his child as a pawn. The judge, a stern woman with tired eyes, listened to it all. In the end, she granted Sarah primary physical custody of Lily. She issued a restraining order that prohibited Michael from harassing Sarah or me. Most crucially, she ordered that Michael's visitation with Lily be supervised for the first 6 months, by a professional from a court-appointed agency, and mandated that he complete a batterer intervention program and parenting classes before petitioning for standard visitation. We didn't destroy him. He still had his job, his house. He still had to pay child support. But we had stripped him of his primary weapons: isolation, fear, and the imminent threat of taking Lily. We had given Sarah the one thing she needed most: legal, enforceable safety. The aftermath wasn't a fairy tale. Sarah moved with Lily into a small, 2-bedroom apartment in a neighboring school district. The fear didn't vanish overnight. Michael contested things through his lawyer for months, dragging out the divorce, but the initial custody order held. Under the bored gaze of a visitation supervisor, his interactions with Lily became strained and brief. The fight seemed to go out of him when he realized his charm had no power in that sterile room, and his threats carried real legal consequences. My salon survived. The health department gave me a spotless bill of health. I quietly disputed the fake reviews, and most were taken down. The weird late-night deliveries stopped. Business even picked up in an unexpected way. Word gets around in a suburb, especially among women. They didn't come and say it outright, but I'd see a new client, a woman with a too quick smile and nervous eyes, and she'd linger after her appointment, making small talk. Then, hesitantly, she might ask, "So, your salon, it's been here a long time, huh? You must see a lot?" Or, "My friend said you're really easy to talk to." I don't give legal advice. I'm just Ellie the hairdresser. But I keep pamphlets for the National Domestic Violence Hotline and the local women's shelter in my drawer. I have Uncle Frank's number memorized. And I know how to listen. Sarah came in last week. Her hair is longer now, and she let me put a vibrant, coppery red streak in it. She's been promoted to assistant manager at Food Mart. Lily is in kindergarten, drawing pictures of her mom with big, sunny smiles. Sarah still has shadows in her eyes, moments when a loud noise makes her flinch. But the terror is gone, replaced by a weary, hard-won calm. As she was leaving, she hugged me, something she'd never done before. "Thank you, Ellie," she whispered, "for seeing me, for not just doing my hair." The bell on the door chimed as she left. I looked out at the rainy street, the same view I've had for 12 years. It looked different now, not just a street, but a network of houses, each with its own quiet battles. And my chair, my station with its scissors and combs and colors, felt less like just a place of business and more like a small, fragile outpost. A place where a highlight could be an act of defiance, a listening ear could be a lifeline, and a hairdresser could learn that courage isn't always a roar. Sometimes, it's the quiet snip of scissors, the steady application of color, and the simple, stubborn decision to not look away.